The small diner was quiet in the early morning. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting soft patterns on the floor. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air, and the faint sound of an old radio played softly in the corner. Lena moved quickly between tables, balancing plates of food and steaming mugs of coffee, trying to keep up with the morning rush. Her apron was tied tightly around her waist, its edges worn from years of use, and her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. She had that look of someone who worked hard every day, whose body carried the weight of responsibilities, yet whose eyes still held a spark of warmth. Lena had been a waitress at this diner for more than 5 years. She knew every regular by name, remembered their favorite meals, and had a knack for noticing when someone was having a rough day. She didn't have much, but she had a kind heart, and she always made sure her customers felt welcome. Her wages were small, barely enough to pay her rent and utilities, but she never complained. She had learned early in life that hard work was the only way to survive. That morning was different, though. The air outside was heavy with the scent of rain, and dark clouds lingered on the horizon. The bell above the diner's door jingled, and Lena glanced up from wiping a table. A boy had entered, small and thin, with clothes that were neat but slightly worn at the edges. His hair was combed, and his shoes, though polished, had seen better days. He carried a small backpack slung over one shoulder and moved quietly, almost as if he didn't want anyone to notice him. He walked straight to a corner table and sat down. He placed his backpack on the seat next to him and opened it carefully, taking out a notebook and a pencil. He didn't order anything right away, just sat there staring out the window at the rain that had begun to fall in soft, steady drops. Lena watched him from behind the counter, her curiosity piqued. There was something about the boy that drew her attention. He looked lonely, and yet there was a calmness about him, as if he was used to being alone. When she approached him, she offered a warm smile. "Good morning," she said gently. "Would you like something to eat or drink?" The boy looked up at her with big, expressive eyes. He hesitated for a moment before saying softly, "Hot chocolate, please." "Of course," Lena replied. She poured the hot chocolate, adding a generous swirl of whipped cream on top, and brought it to his table. "Here you go. On the house," she said, setting it down carefully in front of him. The boy's eyes widened slightly. "Thank you," he whispered. There was a quiet sincerity in his voice, a hint of relief, as if someone had finally noticed him. "You're welcome," Lena said, sitting down across from him for a moment. "My name is Lena. What's yours?" "Eli," he said simply, looking down at his drink. "It's nice to meet you, Eli," Lena said. "Do you come here often?" Eli shrugged. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I like it here. It's peaceful." His voice was small, almost hesitant, but Lena could sense a depth of feeling behind it. Lena smiled warmly. "I'm glad you think so. You know, sometimes it's nice to have a quiet place where you can just sit and think. I like to come here before my shift, just to drink a cup of coffee and watch the world wake up." Eli nodded slowly, taking a careful sip of his hot chocolate. The warmth seemed to bring a small smile to his lips. For a moment, Lena allowed herself to imagine him happy and safe, even if just for a little while. As the days passed, Eli returned to the diner regularly. Lena began to notice small details about him. He always sat in the same corner, opened his notebook, and drew or wrote quietly while sipping his drink. Sometimes he would glance out the window and seem lost in thought. Other times he would watch the other customers with a faint, almost invisible smile. Lena didn't pry, but she made sure he always felt welcome. She learned to anticipate his order: hot chocolate with whipped cream and a chocolate cookie on the side. One rainy afternoon, Lena decided to sit with him again. "You know," she said gently, "I think you're really good at drawing. Your sketches are amazing." Eli looked up, surprised. You think so?" he asked, a hint of shyness in his voice. "I do," Lena said sincerely. "You have a real talent. I wish I could draw like that." Eli blushed, tucking his notebook closer to him. "Thanks," he said quietly. Lena smiled, noticing the way his shoulders seemed to relax slightly. "You know, Eli," she continued, "sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to about your drawings or your thoughts. I'm not very good at art, but I'm a good listener." Eli looked at her, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Do you really mean that?" he asked. "Of course," Lena said. "I like to help people when I can, and it seems like you could use a friend." Over time, their bond grew stronger. Lena would help Eli with his homework, giving him small tips and encouragement. She told him stories from her own childhood, about how she had to work hard and sometimes go without things, but how she had learned to appreciate the small joys in life. Eli listened intently, occasionally asking questions or laughing softly at her stories. Despite the challenges Lena faced in her own life, she always made time for him. She never judged him or asked about his family, even though she wondered why a boy like him seemed so lonely. She assumed he had strict or busy parents, or maybe he was shy and didn't make friends easily. What mattered to her was that he was happy while he was at the diner, even if only for an hour or two. The diner became a place of comfort not only for Eli but also for Lena. Her long hours and tiring workdays felt lighter because of the boy's presence. She began to look forward to their small moments together, a shared laugh, a quiet conversation, or simply watching him sketch in his notebook. One afternoon, Lena noticed that Eli seemed quieter than usual. He stirred his hot chocolate slowly, his eyes distant. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Eli hesitated. I don't know," he admitted. "Sometimes I just feel invisible, like no one notices me." Lena's heart ached. She reached across the table and placed her hand gently on his. "Eli, I notice you. I see you. And you're not invisible to me. You're important and you're special. Don't ever forget that." For the first time in days, Eli smiled. It was small, shy, but genuine. Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief and happiness. She knew that sometimes all a person needed was someone to care, even in the smallest way. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Lena and Eli grew stronger. She continued her work at the diner, balancing plates and wiping tables, but she also made sure to check on Eli every day. She noticed the little thing, how he would tap his pencil when he was thinking, how he liked chocolate more than any other flavor, and how he seemed to brighten when someone showed kindness. Lena didn't know the truth about Eli's life outside the diner. She had no idea that he lived in a grand house in a neighborhood filled with expensive cars and manicured gardens. She didn't know that his father was one of the richest men alive, a man whose name carried weight in every city across the country. She only knew what she could see. A lonely little boy who needed guidance, kindness, and friendship. And Lena, despite her own struggles, gave him exactly that. She gave him attention, patience, and care. She taught him small life lessons, how to be brave, how to be kind, and how to find joy in small moments. She didn't do it for recognition or reward. She did it because it felt right. Eli, in turn, began to trust her more and more. He started sharing little pieces of his life, his thoughts, and his dreams. He talked about wanting to be an artist, about places he wished he could visit, and about his small fears. Lena listened patiently, offering encouragement and gentle advice. She never interrupted or judged. She only guided him with warmth and understanding. It was a bond built on trust and kindness, and neither Lena nor Eli realized how much they were changing each other's lives. Lena, who had always struggled to find hope in the world, felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. Eli, who had felt invisible and lonely, finally found someone who saw him for who he truly was. And so the small diner continued to be their safe haven. Rain or shine, Lena served her customers with a smile, and Eli sat quietly in the corner, drawing and dreaming. Two lives, seemingly ordinary, began to intertwine in ways that neither could have imagined. Little did Lena know. Her simple acts of kindness were about to set the stage for a series of events that would change everything. For her, for Eli, and even for a world she had never imagined entering. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Lena and Eli grew stronger with every visit to the small diner. Every morning, Lena would arrive early, wiping down tables, filling the coffee pots, and arranging the chairs just the way she liked them. But more than the work itself, she looked forward to the moment Eli would step through the door. Even on the busiest mornings when orders piled up and the line stretched out the door, Lena always made a little time for him. Eli had started to open up more. He no longer just sat quietly in the corner. He would ask Lena questions, tell her stories about school, or share small thoughts he had about the world. Lena listened patiently, sometimes giving advice, sometimes just nodding and encouraging him to continue. She noticed how much he loved to draw, how he would sketch little scenes in his notebook, the diner, the rainy streets outside, even the sunlight hitting a window. She could see the care he put into every line, every detail. She never told him that she thought his drawings were beautiful, but she often smiled when she saw the pages he had filled. Eli's visits became more regular, and slowly, Lena began to notice patterns about him. He always came alone. He never spoke about his family or home. Lena assumed, like many adults she had known, that perhaps his parents were too busy, too strict, or maybe even absent. She didn't press him for answers. Instead, she focused on making his time in the diner happy and comfortable. She offered him extra cookies, brought him hot chocolate without asking, and sometimes stayed a little later after her shift to help him with homework. She called him her little friend, and in return, Eli seemed to trust her more than anyone else. Despite all this, Lena's own life was difficult. Her apartment was small and worn, the paint peeling in corners. Bills were often late, and she constantly worried about money. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her to take care of her younger sister. She worked long hours at the diner, and sometimes picked up extra shifts at a local bakery just to make ends meet. But she never let her problems spill over into her interactions with Eli. She knew he already faced his own loneliness, and she wanted him to feel safe and cared for, not burdened by her worries. One rainy afternoon, as Lena wiped down a table near the window, she noticed Eli staring at his notebook more intently than usual. His pencil moved quickly, almost furiously, as if he had suddenly discovered an idea he couldn't wait to put on paper. Lena poured him another cup of hot chocolate and set it in front of him without a word. He looked up and smiled faintly, his eyes brightening for a moment. "Working on something new?" Lena asked gently. Eli nodded. I'm drawing a place I dream about," he said quietly. "It's a big house, lots of trees, and sunlight everywhere. I don't know why I drew it this way, but I like it." Lena leaned closer, curiosity shining in her eyes. "It's beautiful. You really have a talent, Eli. You can make people see things through your drawings." Eli's face flushed slightly. "Thank you. I like it when you notice," he admitted. Lena smiled warmly. "I always notice. You're important, Eli. Your work, your thoughts, they matter." As the weeks went by, Lena's curiosity about Eli's life outside the diner grew. She sometimes wondered where he lived, who took care of him, or why he seemed so lonely despite being so well-dressed and polite. She noticed that he never spoke about friends or siblings, and when she asked gentle questions about home, he would quickly change the subject or give vague answers. Lena respected his privacy, but she also felt a deep sense of concern. She wanted to protect him in the only way she knew how, through kindness, guidance, and attention. Meanwhile, something else became clear to Lena. Eli wasn't just a lonely boy. He was smart, observant, and mature beyond his years. He noticed the smallest details, remembered things she had said weeks ago, and sometimes asked questions that made her pause. Lena found herself impressed by his intelligence and sensitivity. She realized that for all his quiet demeanor, Eli was searching for guidance, for someone to notice him and care without judgment. What Lena didn't know, however, was that Eli's life outside the diner was nothing like it appeared. He didn't live in a small apartment or in difficult circumstances like Lena had imagined. In fact, he lived in a massive house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by manicured gardens and guarded gates. The mansion had large windows that let in sunlight, marble floors that echoed with each step, and rooms filled with expensive furniture and artwork. But despite all the wealth around him, Eli felt invisible. His father, one of the richest men in the country, was rarely home. There were servants, guards, and staff, but there was no warmth, no human connection that Eli longed for. In the mansion, Eli often sat alone, sketching in his notebook, thinking about the small diner he had found months ago. It was the only place where he felt noticed, where someone truly cared for him. Lena's kindness had filled a void that money could never touch. He remembered her smile, her gentle words, and the way she always seemed to make him feel safe. He missed her on days he couldn't come, and he often thought about the stories she told him, the advice she gave him, and the small gestures that meant so much. Back at the diner, Lena continued her routine, unaware of the contrast between Eli's life at home and the image he presented at the diner. She treated him like any other child, offering guidance, encouragement, and a sense of belonging. She didn't care about his family background or wealth. She cared about the boy sitting in front of her, the boy who needed someone to see him. And Eli responded in kind. He began to trust her completely, sharing small fears, dreams, and questions that he never dared ask anyone else. One afternoon, Lena noticed that Eli seemed more thoughtful than usual. He stared out the window at the rain, his pencil resting on his notebook untouched for several minutes. "What's on your mind?" Lena asked, pouring him a cup of hot chocolate. Eli hesitated. I feel different sometimes," he admitted. "At home, I'm invisible. People don't notice me, but here with you, I feel seen." Lena's heart ached at his words. She reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "Eli, you're not invisible to me, and you never will be. You're special and your feelings matter. You're allowed to be seen, to be heard, and to be cared for. Don't ever forget that." Eli smiled faintly, but there was a mixture of relief and sadness in his eyes. Lena realized how much weight he carried, how much he longed for simple human connection, and how much she had come to mean to him without even realizing it herself. Over time, their routine became almost ritualistic. Lena would arrive early to prepare the diner, and Eli would arrive shortly after school, carrying his backpack and notebook. He would order his hot chocolate and a cookie, sit in his corner, and begin to draw. Lena would move around the diner, serving customers, but always keeping an eye on him. She would occasionally sit with him, offering advice or just chatting about small things, weather, books, funny stories from her past. The diner became a sanctuary for both of them. For Lena, it was a place where her hard work felt meaningful, where she could make a real difference in someone's life. For Eli, it was a place where he could feel safe, noticed, and cared for, something that was rare in his life at home. They created a little world together, one built on trust, kindness, and quiet understanding. Lena never imagined that these small, simple interactions would have such a profound impact. She didn't know that by being kind to Eli, she was helping him build confidence, feel loved, and understand that someone genuinely cared for him. And Eli, in turn, didn't know that his presence in the diner was giving Lena hope, purpose, and a sense of joy that she had not felt in years. Despite their growing bond, Lena still had questions. She sometimes wondered why Eli never spoke about his family or home, why he always seemed to avoid certain topics. She respected his privacy, but there was a small nagging curiosity inside her. Who was he outside the diner? Why did he feel so lonely despite being polite, well-dressed, and seemingly cared for? Lena didn't press him for answers. Instead, she continued to do what she did best, offer kindness, guidance, and a safe space. She understood that sometimes people need time to open up, and forcing the truth could break the fragile trust they had built. And so, life continued in the small diner, with the rain falling softly outside, the smell of coffee and fresh bread filling the air, and the quiet companionship between a hard-working waitress and a lonely boy growing stronger each day. They didn't know what the future held, but in that moment they had each other, and that was enough. Lena's simple acts of kindness, patience, and understanding were slowly shaping Eli's world in ways that no one could have imagined. And for Lena, the small boy in the corner was teaching her lessons about hope, trust, and the power of human connection, lessons that would change both of their lives forever. One chilly evening, the diner was quieter than usual. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the dim streetlights outside. Lena wiped down the tables, humming softly under her breath as she arranged the chairs. It had been a long day, with the lunch rush spilling into the evening. Her feet ached, her back was sore, but she felt a small sense of satisfaction knowing she had done her best to keep the diner running smoothly. Eli had been unusually quiet that day. He had come in as usual after school, carrying his backpack and notebook, but he hadn't drawn much. Instead, he sat at his corner table, staring out the window, his face thoughtful and distant. Lena noticed it immediately. She approached him, placing a cup of hot chocolate in front of him. "Hey," she said softly. "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" Eli looked up, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hesitation and sadness. I don't know," he said quietly. "I just feel strange, like something is wrong, but I don't know what." Lena nodded gently. "It's okay to feel that way sometimes. Everyone does. But it's always good to talk about it, even a little. I'm here if you want to share." Eli hesitated, then shook his head. "Not yet," he whispered. "Maybe later." Lena smiled warmly. "That's fine. Take your time." She patted his hand lightly before moving to attend to another table, but her heart felt uneasy. She could sense that something was about to change, something that might shake both their worlds. Later that evening, as Lena was stacking chairs and wiping the counters one last time, the bell above the diner's door jingled. She looked up and froze. Standing there was a man in a tailored suit, tall and imposing, with an air of authority that made the diner feel smaller. He didn't look like a regular customer. Lena's first instinct was to greet him politely, but before she could say anything, the man spoke. "Are you Lena?" he asked, his voice firm but controlled. "Yes," Lena replied cautiously. "Can I help you?" The man's eyes scanned the diner quickly before settling on her. "You've been spending time with my son," he said, his tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. Lena's heart skipped a beat. "Your son?" she asked, confused. "Yes," the man said, his voice carrying a cold edge. "Eli. You've been taking him out of the house, feeding him, talking to him, spending time with him. I need to know why." Lena's mind raced. I don't know what you mean. "I've been helping him with homework, giving him food and drink, and making sure he's okay. That's all. I don't even know who his family is." The man's expression hardened. "You didn't know?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you know who I am?" Lena shook her head slowly, feeling a pit of unease form in her stomach. "No, I don't, but it doesn't matter. I only care about Eli. He's a child. He needs someone to care about him." The man's face remained stern, but there was a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He glanced toward the corner where Eli sat quietly, looking down at his notebook, unaware of the tension in the diner. "I am Eli's father," the man said finally. "I am one of the wealthiest men alive, and I don't appreciate strangers meddling in my child's life." Lena felt a wave of shock and embarrassment. She hadn't known. She had been helping Eli simply because she cared, without any thought of who his family might be. She opened her mouth to speak, but the man continued. "You should have known better," he said, his tone sharp. "You have no right to interfere in my son's life." Lena felt her cheeks flush. She swallowed hard, fighting back tears of frustration and hurt. "I didn't know who he was," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've only ever tried to help him. He's lonely. He needs someone to care, and I care, that's all. I haven't asked for anything in return." The man said nothing for a long moment. He looked at her, then at Eli, then back at her again. Eli's head was down, his small hands clutching his notebook tightly. Lena could see the worry and fear in his eyes. She realized how much the boy must be caught between two worlds, the comfort he found with her and the power and authority of his father. I just wanted him to feel safe," Lena added softly. "To feel like someone noticed him, cared about him. That's all I've ever wanted." The man remained silent, his face unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned and left the diner, taking Eli with him. Lena watched them go, feeling a mix of relief that Eli was safe and a deep sadness at being left behind, misunderstood, and humiliated in front of her co-workers. The next few days were hard. Lena continued to work at the diner, but everything felt empty without Eli's quiet presence in the corner. She found herself glancing at the door constantly, hoping he might walk in, even though she knew he wouldn't. She worried about how he was feeling, if he was okay, and if his father would understand the care and kindness she had shown. Eli, meanwhile, struggled at home. The mansion, which had once seemed so impressive and grand, now felt cold and lonely. He tried to explain to his father that Lena hadn't been meddling or trying to take advantage of him. She had only cared, only tried to make him feel safe and noticed. But words were hard, and his father's pride and distance made communication difficult. Eli's frustration grew. He remembered the warmth of Lena's smile, the gentle way she listened to him, and the small kindnesses she offered. He longed to return to the diner, to feel that sense of comfort and safety again. One night he sat in his bedroom looking at his sketches and whispered to himself, "She only wanted to help me, only to care." The realization made his chest ache with guilt and sadness. The following morning, Lena arrived at the diner early, as usual, trying to keep her mind occupied. She poured coffee, wiped down tables, and arranged the chairs, but her thoughts kept drifting to Eli. She wondered how he was feeling, if he was okay, and if he remembered the small moments they had shared. She felt a mix of hope and fear, not knowing when or if she would see him again. Then, just as she was finishing up, the diner bell jingled. Lena looked up quickly and froze. There, standing in the doorway, was Eli. He was soaked from the rain, his small backpack hanging from one shoulder, and his notebook clutched tightly in his hands. His eyes were wide and nervous, scanning the diner until they landed on Lena. "Eli!" Lena exclaimed, rushing toward him. She wrapped her arms around him carefully, feeling the shiver that ran through his small frame. "What happened? Where have you been?" Eli clung to her for a moment before stepping back slightly. I ran away," he admitted softly. "I needed to be here. I wanted to see you." Lena's heart ached. She had worried about him, feared for his safety, and now he was here, trusting her completely again. "You can't just leave like that," she said gently, though her voice was filled with relief. "It's dangerous, but I'm glad you're here. You're safe now." Eli nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I needed to be with someone who cares," he whispered. "And I knew you do." Lena smiled, fighting back her own tears. "I do, Eli, I always will. You're important to me. Don't ever forget that." For the first time in days, Eli smiled, a small, shy smile but genuine. Lena knew that despite the challenges and misunderstandings, their bond had only grown stronger. The diner, which had been their safe haven, now felt more alive than ever. Lena made sure he was warm and dry, brought him a hot chocolate, and sat with him as he began to sketch again. She listened to his stories, encouraged him gently, and reminded him that he was never alone, no matter what happened outside the diner. And in that quiet moment, with the rain outside and the warm light of the diner surrounding them, Lena realized something important. Her simple acts of kindness, listening, caring, and being present, were more powerful than she had ever imagined. They could heal loneliness, build trust, and create a bond that no misunderstanding or authority could break. That night, as the diner closed and Lena locked the door, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. Eli was safe, happy, and reminded her that even in a world full of difficulties, simple human connection could make all the difference. Little did Lena know, this event, the confrontation, the misunderstanding, and Eli's return, was only the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. The days after Eli's return to the diner were filled with a mixture of relief, joy, and quiet reflection. Lena felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, but it was the kind of responsibility that warmed her heart rather than weighed her down. She noticed small changes in Eli, too. He seemed more confident, though still reserved, and there was a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The quiet boy who once sat in the corner now shared more of his thoughts and feelings with her. Despite the happiness of having Eli back, Lena knew that their connection was fragile. Eli still lived in a world very different from hers, a world of wealth and expectations that she could barely imagine. She could sense the tension inside him, the tug between the comfort he felt with her and the demands and authority of his father. Lena tried to be patient, giving him space when needed and support when he wanted it. One morning, Eli arrived at the diner earlier than usual. He was carrying his sketchbook, but he wasn't smiling. Lena noticed immediately that something was bothering him. She poured him a cup of hot chocolate and sat down across from him. "You look worried, Eli. What's on your mind?" she asked gently. Eli hesitated, staring at the table. I want to tell you something about my dad," he said quietly. I think he doesn't understand me. He doesn't see me. He doesn't see what I need." Lena nodded. "Sometimes adults are busy or they have their own worries. But that doesn't mean you aren't important. What do you want him to understand?" Eli took a deep breath. "I want him to see that I like simple things. That I like to draw, to talk, to have someone care. I want him to know that kindness matters more than money or rules." Lena reached across the table and held his hand gently. "Eli, you're right. Kindness is important. And it sounds like you need to tell him in your way how you feel. He may not understand right away, but it's worth trying." For the next few days, Eli struggled with the courage to speak to his father. At home, the mansion felt colder than ever. His father's presence was commanding, his tone firm and distant. The servants moved silently through the rooms and the grand halls echoed with emptiness. Eli felt a growing tension inside him, a mix of fear and longing. He remembered Lena's words, her calm encouragement, and decided that he had to try. One afternoon after school, Eli's father returned home earlier than expected. Eli took a deep breath and approached him cautiously. "Dad," he began, his voice soft but determined, "I want to talk to you about something important." His father looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Go ahead, he said, though his expression remained unreadable. Eli swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the words he had rehearsed so many times. It's about Lena, he said. She cares about me. She helps me with my homework, she listens to me, and she makes me feel safe. I know you think she's meddling, but she's not. She only wants to help me. His father's eyes softened slightly, though he did not speak immediately. Eli continued, his words tumbling out. I like being with her. I feel happy when she's around. She's the only person who sees me the way I want to be seen. I know you don't understand, but she's important to me, and I want you to see why. The room was quiet for a long moment. Eli's father looked at his son, noticing the earnest expression, the sincerity, and the small tremble in his voice. He realized, perhaps for the first time, how lonely Eli must have felt despite all the wealth, the servants, and the grand house. He saw the pain behind his son's eyes and the longing for human connection that money could never buy. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer than Eli had ever heard. You care deeply about her, don't you? Eli nodded. Yes, I do. She's been there for me when no one else was. I want you to understand that she's not trying to hurt me or take advantage of me. She only cares. His father remained silent for a moment, processing the words. Then he said slowly, I think I may have misjudged her. I didn't realize. I didn't see what you were feeling. She has made a difference in your life. Eli's heart swelled with relief. He had been worried that his father would never understand, but now there was a glimmer of hope. I just want you to see that kindness matters, he said softly. His father nodded, a faint smile appearing on his face. I see that now, and I see that you matter. Thank you for telling me. That evening, Eli returned to the diner. Lena was wiping tables when she noticed him walking in, a small, shy smile on his face. Lena, he said softly, approaching her table, my dad. He understands now. He knows why you're important to me.
He said he was sorry for misunderstanding. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled warmly.
That's wonderful, Eli. I'm so proud of you for speaking up and sharing your feelings. Eli smiled wider, the tension in his shoulders easing. I couldn't have done it without you, Lena. You helped me find the courage. The diner felt warmer that evening. Lena and Eli sat together, talking quietly, laughing softly, and sharing a sense of comfort that neither of them had known before. The bond between them had grown even stronger, forged through challenges, honesty, and trust. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Eli's father began to change as well. He visited the diner one afternoon, alone this time, looking nervous but determined. Lena noticed him immediately and straightened, unsure of what to expect. I wanted to apologize, he said, his voice sincere. I misjudged you. I didn't realize how much care and kindness you had shown my son. I see it now, and I'm grateful. Lena felt a mix of surprise and relief. Thank you, she said softly. I only ever wanted what was best for Eli. I didn't know who his family was, and I never expected anything in return. The man nodded. I understand that now, and I want to make sure you know, your kindness hasn't gone unnoticed. Eli talks about you constantly. He feels safe with you, and I want him to have that, with your guidance if you're willing. Lena's heart raced. She realized that this was more than an apology. It was an offer, a recognition of the impact she had made on a child who truly needed her. She nodded slowly. I would like that. I care about him deeply, and I only want him to be happy. From that day on, a new chapter began. Lena continued to guide Eli, helping him with homework, encouraging his art, and sharing life lessons. But now there was a sense of collaboration with his father as well. The once distant, cold mansion slowly became a place where Eli could feel warmth and attention, while Lena remained the constant figure of care and kindness that had always been there. Eli flourished under the combined support. He drew more confidently, shared his thoughts more openly, and began to understand the power of expressing his feelings. Lena watched with quiet pride as the boy who had once seemed so lonely now smiled more freely, laughed more easily, and began to trust the world around him. Through these experiences, Lena herself grew stronger. She realized that her acts of kindness, patience, and understanding had not only helped Eli, but had also brought hope and purpose into her own life. She felt proud, not because of recognition or reward, but because she had made a real difference in a child's life. And as the diner continued to serve its regular customers, Filled with the smell of coffee and fresh bread, the bond between Lena, Eli, and his father grew deeper. They were no longer just a lonely boy and a kind waitress. They had become a small, fragile family, connected through trust, understanding, and the power of simple human connection. Little did Lena know, this newfound understanding and acceptance was preparing the ground for opportunities and surprises that neither she nor Eli could have imagined, changes that would shape the course of their lives in ways that began in the quiet, warm corner of a small diner. The diner had become more than just a place to eat. For Lena, it was a space where small miracles happened every day. And for Eli, it had grown into a sanctuary, a place where he felt safe, seen, and understood. After the conversation with his father, things had begun to change. Not overnight, but in subtle, meaningful ways. Lena noticed it in Eli's smile, the way he sat taller in his chair, the spark of creativity in his drawings. But the biggest change came when his father, once distant and cold, began to make an effort. One afternoon, Lena was arranging freshly baked muffins on the counter when the diner bell jingled. She looked up and saw Eli's father standing there again. He didn't have the same imposing air he once carried. Instead, there was a softness in his expression, a humility that had not been there before. "Lena," he said, his voice calm but sincere, "I've been thinking, you've done more for Eli than I ever could in all my years. I see how much he trusts you, how much he depends on your guidance. I want to make sure you know that I am grateful." Lena felt her heart swell. She smiled, trying to hide the tears that threatened to spill. "Thank you," she said softly. "I only care about him. That's all I ever wanted." The man nodded. "I know, and I want to offer you something. It's not just a token of gratitude, but an opportunity. I'm opening a new family cafe in town, and I want you to be a part of it. You would manage it, have full support, and yes, a salary that actually reflects your hard work. I want you to have stability, Lena, and I want Eli to have someone he trusts in his life consistently." Lena froze for a moment. She had worked hard all her life, but opportunities like this had always seemed out of reach. She looked at Eli, who was standing shyly behind his father, and saw the hope and excitement in his eyes. Her mind raced, imagining the possibilities. I don't know what to say," she admitted. Her voice trembled slightly. "I never expected something like this." "You deserve it," Eli's father said firmly. "You've shown kindness, patience, and care that money cannot buy. You've changed my son's life, and I want to make sure your life changes too, in a good way." Eli stepped forward, his small hand reaching for Lena's. "Please say yes," he whispered. "I want you with me. I want you to be part of everything." Lena felt tears spill down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded slowly, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief. "Yes," she said, her voice steady now. "I will." The days that followed were filled with excitement, planning, and transformation. Lena began working with Eli's father to set up the new cafe. She helped design the space, arrange the furniture, and create a menu that would feel warm and welcoming. It wasn't just about the business. It was about creating a place where families could feel connected, where children could feel safe, and where kindness was at the heart of every interaction. Eli was a constant presence during these preparations. He helped in small ways, sketching ideas for the cafe's decor, testing out drinks and desserts, and learning how to interact with customers. Lena guided him patiently, encouraging his creativity and teaching him lessons about responsibility and confidence. She never treated him as a child incapable of understanding. Instead, she respected his thoughts, listened to his ideas, and nurtured his talents. Word about the new cafe began to spread in town. People were curious about the place that promised warmth, family friendliness, and a personal touch. Lena found herself at the center of this new chapter, balancing tasks, staff, and logistics, all while making sure Eli felt included and comfortable. She had never imagined her life could change so dramatically, but the transformation was not just material, it was emotional too. She felt valued, respected, and most importantly, fulfilled in a way she had never known. One rainy afternoon, Lena found herself sitting with Eli, taking a brief pause from the bustling preparations. Eli was drawing in his notebook, his small pencil moving swiftly across the page. Lena watched him, smiling softly. "You've come a long way, you know," she said gently. "You're confident, creative, and kind. I'm proud of you." Eli looked up, his eyes shining. "I wouldn't have done it without you." he said softly. You believed in me when no one else did. You helped me see that I matter. Lena felt a lump in her throat. You always mattered, Eli, she said. I just helped you see it for yourself.